Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So I know you've had an extensive career in politics. Before we delve into the current campaign, what first made you get involved in politics?
Well, living in Rye, as I do now, I grew up in Mount Vernon, left Westchester County in the early 1980s as my corporate career involved some movement from one location to the other. I came back in the mid-80s and bought a house in Rye, which is my wife's hometown, and got involved in community events, the United Way, my church, and a few other things. And the local Democratic Party was looking to fill a slate for the city council in 1987. And the Rye City Council is an unpaid position. It's hardly the launching off of a long-term political career. It's more like you've agreed to serve on the board of a local not-for-profit, like the local library or the local, recreational facility. So I agreed to run. At that point in time, Rye was a heavily Republican community. It was 2 years before it had been a 7-0 Republican board. And so I didn't have high expectations of winning. But I ran. I kind of balanced the ticket because of my relative youth in those days. Kind of funny to be in my 70 now, and I was 33 then, and I was the young Democrat of that day. But I ran, and of course my skills in sales and marketing, which is what I did professionally, helped me run a door-to-door campaign, and I wound up winning against the odds. And as I got involved in government at that level, Rye City Council, Rye is a small municipality. It's not, the issues are the issues, but they're not as complicated as you would get in a larger city. I realized I liked being involved in the decision-making process. I liked having an input, and I was very comfortable going out in the community, meeting people, getting their ideas and opinions. And I was a much more activist councilman than others. So long story short, I got kind of bit by the virus. My corporate career existed during those years and into my early tenure in the county legislature, but I pretty much realized how much I valued what I could do in government, and primarily because if you work intelligently and you work hard and you get results, those results benefit other people. It's not just you're working for yourself, you're making money and you're having a better quality life for yourself, but you can actually see other people benefiting from it. So that became my ultimate life calling.
That's really great to hear, and as someone who's just turned 33, it's nice to hear that that's where your political career started.
Young.
Yes. So throughout your political career, what is the thing or moment that you're most proud of?
Well, I think during my tenure as county executive, this is the one job that I've had that is an executive job, and as an executive, you can many times see the actual end result for the decision that you make. When you're a legislator, you vote for money, you vote for a budget, you vote for a law. But when you're an executive, you implement it, and in some cases where we're talking about physical improvements, you actually see the physical improvement. The rebuilding of Memorial Field in Mount Vernon, when that field that was devastated, the county got involved, we did the work necessary to get it done, to stand there with the ribbon cutting on the very field that I had gotten my high school diploma on. And I had seen how bad it looked before we got involved. That was a great sense of accomplishment. A little closer to home in White Plains, just north of the city, you have the Miller House, Washington headquarters. That's an historic site on Virginia Road. It's just over the border of North Castle. And the building was a disaster. There was a blue tarp over the roof to try to protect the inside of this historic building where I'm told Washington's spent time during the Battle of White Plains. We put the money and the time and effort in. We were assisted by then Assemblyman David Buckwald, who was able to secure $250,000 of state dollars, and we had $3 million of county dollars, and we were able to fix it and to enhance it. And when we reopened it in 2019, it's now been open for 5 years, and it is again an historical site that people can enjoy. So those are examples of things. I have some other ones in my county executive tenure that I'm most proud of. In my legislative career, I was able to accomplish some things, bring some revenue into the district. I voted as a state legislator, I voted for marriage equality, I voted for raising the minimum wage, protecting a woman's right to choose. So those are all political positions which accomplish things at the state level, for which I'm proud of being a part of. The county executive years that I'm in the process of, year 7 now, really accomplished some things that I think I will look back when I'm out of the business, assuming I'm still on the planet, that I'll be able to drive by and look at it and say, yes, we were involved in fixing that, and that's a good feeling.
And just as a constituent, thank you for everything that you've done. So what made you decide to run for Congress?
Well, And it's a point in my life where I didn't feel I needed to run for a position for ambition's sake. I have been in the state legislature, you know, the resumes there, a lot of things I've been able to do. The county executive was a very satisfying position. But I was approached by a number of people who felt that we needed a different kind of representation in Washington than we were getting. I didn't want to relitigate it. We had a primary, and the results came out as they did. It was very strong support. It was not unanimous, but what I thought at the beginning is what I intend to do if I'm elected in November, which I'm working hard to do, which is to really focus on the needs of the district, try to bring resources from the federal government back to the district. Now, I'm going to be a strong supporter of certain policy issues, protecting women's right to choose, environmental concerns, protecting the rights in the LGBTQ community, protecting Social Security and Medicare. All of those things are principles that are held by all of the Democrats in the House, and I would intend to be part of that and stand up for those things. But it's my ability to connect with people and to help them see a government that's as far away as the federal government have relevance in their backyard. And to do that, I intend to work closely with local governments and with the county government that I'm leaving to work back with them. You're going to see me around town as you always have. Mm-hmm. People routinely see me in White Plains and a host of things. I go to the Purdy House for events. Excuse me, I go to Richway Alliance where they have a food pantry distribution of food on Tuesdays and Fridays, the Slater Center. Sometimes I'll pop into White Plains City Hall when they're having a meeting on a governmental issue. To the extent that I'll be in the district, I intend to do those same things, which basically means you'll have a member of Congress who's local, a person you know. I'm George. You don't need to address me with a fancy title. I'm not going to have an entourage around me. But I'll try to do in Washington what I've done in representing White Plains. I represented White Plains in the state Senate, and earlier in my career I represented a portion of White Plains in the county legislature. And I would intend to be that kind of representative now at the Washington level. And hopefully, if we have the right combination, Speaker Jeffries, President Harris, continued Majority Leader Schumer, we'll be able to do some, significant accomplishments.
Absolutely. And I want to get to that in a moment, but I just wanted to talk about, in terms of campaigning, and you can talk about this campaign or any of the campaigns that you've run, what's some experiences that you have found rewarding, some that you found challenging, anything surprising, anything you would have done differently, and anything you felt you did particularly well? And you can answer any or all
Sure.
of those.
Well, I think I started running for office, 30 some odd, almost 40 years ago, and the world has changed since then. We've talked off camera about the role that technology has played. When I first started running for office in the late 80s, which precedes some people being on the planet, there was no internet. There was no www dot anything in those days. You had emails within a corporate company, an intramail, but no external internet where I could reach people with an email to them. There was no texting, and cell phones were not in existence to any great extent when I first started. So the campaigning that I first grew up on, my first race, my race for the city council, my first race for the county legislature, was old style retail campaigning. I stood in front of grocery stores, I stood in front of bagel shops, I knocked on doors, door to door, I attended events and worked my way through the crowd. And so in many ways, I'm still a creature of that in the things that I do. I kind of alluded to some of the things that I've been at just in White Plains alone, notwithstanding multiply that by other communities. So I still default in my campaign effort along those lines. The least comfortable part of a campaign for me is raising money. It is a necessity. You must have money to get your message out. You must use modern means of communications, and it's very expensive. So to get on a phone and call a potential donor and ask them for an amount of money that's specific is difficult to do. I don't know how many of my colleagues actually like doing it. I assume there's some that do, but most of us do not, because it's really, you feel it can be intrusive, but it's necessary. And if the other guy outspends you, and I've been outspent in a lot of races. I know this most recent race, there was much to be said about where the campaign monies came from, but I was the underdog in spending to Rob Astorino when I beat him for county executive. I was the underdog in finances. All three of my state senate races. The first state senate race I was outspent 4-1. The Astorino race I was outspent about 2.5 to 3-1. But I still raised enough money, but I didn't love doing it. Going to the train station first thing in the morning, the White Plains train station, the main train station, is like standing in a river. Mm-hmm. There's people coming in left and right, and they're pretty strict about you not campaigning inside the building. So if you're doing it and it's cold the last week of October, the first couple of days of November, it's pretty uncomfortable to be outside the building intercepting people. But there's so many people that come in through that station. Also, North White Plains gets a group of people from outside the area. But doing train stations early in the morning, that's an acquired taste too. I do it every cycle, I do it for other candidates, but it gets tiresome. I never get tired of situations where I'm meeting with people. So if somebody has a house party, no donation required, just come to my house and meet the candidate and ask questions, you get to know people on a personal level. That to me is something I like doing, is very satisfying. I've run a lot of races. I have never taken a race for granted. I've been in races where I was the underdog. I've been in races where I was the incumbent and assumed likely to win. But I treat all of them the same way. That it's people will decide. They'll decide based on whatever it is that motivates them. And my job is to try to put my credentials in front of them in whatever way I can. But then also understand that it's their decision. And I'm comfortable with that. And I've had success, but there's no guarantee that the next time out is a success. So even right now, as we're having this interview, I'm a little less than 7 weeks away from the general election for Congress, and we're working. We're going to events, we're raising money, we're preparing our communications, and we're going to get our message out.
Absolutely, and I smiled because I also have been at the White Plains train station in those hours, and it can be cold, but
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've been there many more times, but I can commiserate. So I wanted to touch base on just in that context on social media. I know that you've had a presence both on a personal level and a professional level, and there's of course good and bad. And I wanted to know your feelings on social media in relation to politics.
It's an interesting thing because I know there's lots of different platforms for social media. In my personal side, where I actually managed what I put on, I took the pictures and I posted them. I have been at various times active on Facebook, Twitter, or X now, Twitter and LinkedIn. I never did get on Instagram or TikTok or some of the other platforms that exist out there, Pinterest and what have you. I recognize that much of the world gets their information now in electronic form. It's concerning to me philosophically because you're not vetting information the way you do if it's an established news firm. And somebody says, somebody's eating dogs, some illegal alien is eating cats and dogs in Springfield. Totally bogus. But it hits the internet. Donald Trump picks it up and he runs with it and he repeats it. And there's a large number of Americans that think it's true, just like they think that the 2020 election was a stolen election. It was not. It was a fairly held election. And the ability to manipulate social media is very, very strong. I recognize in my professional life, in Westchester County government, we have a presence on social media, and it's managed by one of our professional communications people, and they put out information that's important to know about what the county is doing. Within my campaign, we have presence on social media and I have somebody managing that information. I personally got off of Twitter 3.5 years ago, and I got off of Facebook. I didn't cancel my account, it's there, but I haven't put any active posting, nor am I watching other posts for about the last month plus. And the unfortunate thing is that any tool has a value that can be used for good, but could also be used for negative purposes. And what I found as a candidate for office on my personal page, it was an opportunity for people who not just opposed me, but wanted to say vicious things and misrepresent myself, that they used that platform to criticize me. And I didn't feel the need on my personal page to do that, but I couldn't stop what was coming in. And I'd find that I'd have to be looking at my Facebook page or my other information all the time to try to weed out the stuff that's bad. So I just made the decision, I'm good. So I'm not actively posting on my Facebook page. I have not posted anything on Twitter in 3+ years. None of the other platforms I've been involved in. Do I think that they are irrelevant platforms? No, I think they're very relevant. But I just know for me, I could spend my time in the cyber world all day looking at those things, responding to negatives, and posting every little thing I do. Some candidates do that. Or I could live in the real world. In the real world, I actually meet with people. I talk with people about their concerns. They get an idea of who I am as a person. And that's more important to me. And I think, in my experience, this recent primary and prior to that, there are people who've attacked me. I was attacked when I ran, for county executive, other things. They say negative things. Those things will stick if the person who's seeing it doesn't know you. But if they have some sense of who you are, if they know you, they talk to you. Not just that they've read about you or they saw a video of you, but they've met you someplace, in the farmer's market on a Wednesday or wherever. and you can relate to them as a person. And then somebody says, oh, George Latimer's a bad guy. He really is out for himself. This is who he is. And then we have a chance to talk and meet over time, work on an issue, and we follow up and we resolve it. Then you realize that that's just a political attack. They're using a tool to try to win an election, not to try to tell you what the truth is. So I don't engage in it. And it's unfortunate because this is a tremendous tool for good. Unfortunately, there are people who are unscrupulously using it for bad. And I can say the same thing about cable television. You know, cable television is a good thing, but you have some channels that are created to advance a political ideology, and they will misrepresent the truth. They know what's true. They've even been in lawsuits to have to defend, you know, the actions and lost. But the bottom line is that I think we need to the best we can, deal with social media, but have a certain amount of check and balance in our own minds as consumers of information that just says what I'm reading may not be true. I'm not going to treat it as gospel. And I don't know what's going to happen, you know, in the days to come, the years to come, generations. I'm a, you know, aging baby boomer. I get it. I'm not the main event now. It's millennials and Zs, Gen Zers, and whatever comes after that. But those generations are going to have to figure out, how do you discern what's true? Because if you build ideas and political support on things that are absolute lies, this country will lose its democracy. And that's not about me or the office I'm in. That's a much broader situation. And I'm afraid that manipulation of social media, if Joseph Goebbels was alive trying to do Hitler's dirty work, he would have a tremendous tool in social media to try to move people's minds in a direction that would be for the negative. So I hope we'll be able to find that inner strength to use the medium in a positive way, but know when it's being used for manipulative purposes, and, you know, shut that down.
But thank you for taking the time to do this with us, and I appreciate it, but definitely hear you on your concerns. So just two more questions.
Sure.
Once you get to Congress, or assuming you get to Congress, and you can answer this if on the happy assumption that Democratic nominee Vice President Harris wins, or otherwise, do you have any specific goals or things that you'd really like to achieve in your first term?
Well, I think, you know, you pose what is the question that we can't possibly know. On the assumption that I win the seat, and you know, the circumstances are good, it's a solid Democratic district, but I assume nothing until the votes are tabulated on November 5th. If I go to Washington as part of a majority in the House, and there's a Democratic president, then I think there's a host of things that we are all talking about tackling. We have to improve our activities at the border. We've got to strengthen border control. We've got to have an appropriate path for people to become Americans, but it cannot be the system that you have now, because it's not effective. It's not properly vetting people when they come in at the border, and you have to have that process. So I think we have work to do on the border issue. We have work to do in dealing with the affordability crisis that we have now. The economy's getting better. Our economy has bounced back faster than any other country in the free world, but people pay more for eggs when they go to the grocery store. If they pay more money at the pump, by the way, they're paying less money today at the pump than they paid a year ago, but people don't see it. They just go to the pump and it's $3 whatever, and that ticks them off, and they're angry, and they have to blame somebody. Well, they can't blame the oil companies. They can't blame the middlemen in the egg process. It's not the farmers making the money. So they blame the elected officials, and they say, well, it must be the fault of the president's policies. But the policies seem to be doing a little bit better right now in most of these issues, so I think that's a good sign. So I think we do have to tackle, because the question was what are we going to do in Washington, I think we have to tackle the affordability question. And affordability involves housing, food, fuel, healthcare. I'd say those 4 areas are the 4 areas that affect people the most. If you are of a certain age and you have children, then childcare becomes a very important situation. If you're at another end of the spectrum, the concerns about health care rises to the top of the list above everything else. And I think that, you know, I would look as part of the Democratic majority to work on those issues productively. Back home, we have the same affordability questions. We have problems of flooding. That's on people's minds. We have localized issues and problems that a federal government should bring attention to, certain particular infrastructure needs and so forth. I would try to be a diligent steward in those areas. We have issues that relate to the release of polluted water in the Hudson and Holtec, and what are our environmental support for the continued cleanup of the Long Island Sound. So there's a lot of issues out there, and I think we'll have to pick a couple that we focus on. I recognize that seniority comes with years of service, and I enter the House, if I enter the House, at a fairly advanced age. So I'm not looking at, okay, in 30 years I'll be this, because in 30 years I don't know what I'll be, but so I have to work smart and I have to work quickly to develop the relationships to try to have some positive results. But I would say the affordability question is very much there. And then, of course, the protection of some of these basic rights that are going to be under threat. If we don't have a Democratic president and or we don't have a Democratic House, these things are going to be much tougher. And it could very well be, if I have a hostile national government around me, my ability to deliver won't be about my level of energy. It'll be the door is shut. You're a Democrat, you're from New York, you're the enemy, we're not giving anything to New York. You saw that happen with the salt tax deduction. When they got rid of the salt tax deduction, they knew it was going to hurt New York, California, Massachusetts, Illinois, those states, those blue states, and they didn't care because that wasn't where they got their support. So they went ahead and did those cuts the way they did. And we will have work to do to reverse those.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. That was a great answer. And this is just a final fun question. So I remember when you were posting on Facebook in your personal capacity, you wrote a lot about music and your love of music. And I love that commentary. So what are your 3 favorite songs or 3 songs that have a special meaning to you?
Well, it's such a broad question. There's a lot of songs out there. I grew up in the 60s, in my teen years, so I was influenced by the music of my teens, my 20s, and then my 30s. So 60s, 70s, and 80s is the music that I grew up on into the early 90s. Obviously, hip-hop has come along after that. There's a lot of stars who I hear their work and I appreciate them, but they weren't the music of my youth. So, you go back to my youth and I hear the Beatles and I hear the Motown music, the soul songs of the early 70s, the Sound of Philadelphia, the disco era, the beat. That's the music that I grew up on. I think some of the softer, quieter songs are my most favorite songs. I'll give you a couple of examples. Bruce Springsteen, My Hometown, where he talks about Asbury Park. His father's driving around. He says, son, take a good look around. This is your hometown. And he talks about the factory being moved out of the mill and these jobs aren't coming back here anymore to your hometown. I think about that because the hometown that I grew up in, Mount Vernon, and other communities, not just in Westchester, but they had that experience of things changing and the economics changing. A very moving song by the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby. They have songs that were, mega sellers, Hey Jude, Let It Be, and Get Back, and so forth. But listen to Eleanor Rigby, where they talk about a woman who dies and doesn't leave anybody behind her. Father Mackenzie wipes the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved. You think about the line, all the lonely people, where do they all come from? Where do they all belong? That is part of our societal responsibility. And when I hear a song like that, it makes me think about, I heard it as a kid. Now I'm hearing it as a grown adult through most of my life having been spent. What do we do to try to make people's lives better? We can't make a lonely person unlonely. That's a personal relationship situation. But we can try to give them some sense of joy in the community around them. And a song like that matters. Both of those 2 songs, both Springsteen and the Beatles, touched on something in a quiet song, which wasn't a big seller. And then there's a lot of songs in the soul era, pre-hip hop, black music. I grew up in an African American neighborhood. I was the only white kid there, so in my immediate world, a lot of Motown, a lot of James Brown, a lot of music that talked to the black culture. And I'd hear some of the songs by the Temptations. A song like Papa Was a Rolling Stone, which talks about sort of a breakdown in that particular family and society. And you hear songs like that. Again, it's a soft song. It's not a hard rocking song. It's not melodious, My Girl, or Ain't Too Proud to Beg. And it makes you think. So the music that makes you think are the ones that keep the greatest reservoir within me. What do I think about now, my 70th year, having heard songs that I heard when I was 17? They were nice tunes, and I'm going out to some event or club, dancing or something, and now at 70, it's a different listen. Eleanor Rigby, My Hometown, Papa Was a Rolling Stone.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. And if you have any questions for me or anything else you'd like to say, feel free.
No, I just think this is a great initiative. I think it's important when we recognize people in the White Plains Democratic community. This this community group of Democrats is diverse. The community is diverse. Politics being what it is, there's ambition, there's a collision, and if we deal with it in a straightforward way, competition is a good thing. When it becomes personal and animosity, if it becomes just about identity or just about some negativity, then we hurt ourselves. But even in a city like White Plains, you're a bedrock of what the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party isn't the guys I see on national TV. It's the people who go out, get the petition, ring doorbells up and down the street they live in, whether they live in Haviland Manor, in the Highlands, if they live in Fisher Hill or Ferris Avenue, and they knock on doors and they say, would you sign my petition to help qualify Jewel Williams Johnson to serve in the county legislature? That's the bedrock of the Democratic Party. It's right there in White Plains as it is elsewhere. And as long as I have been in this, I've tried to be supportive of that grassroots, and as long as I am in it, I intend to be supportive of that.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Danielle.